Stormlight Archive, Rhythm of War, top 10 moments. This is going to be an opinion-based list, and it's going to be 5 from me. I'm Scott. Channel is Blue Lotus, and 5 from Zach. You want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Zach. I'm from Middle Fantasy, and I'm a huge Stormlight fan. I'm actually in a hidden bunker right now on vacation. Like, don't bother me. It's Rhythm of War time. I actually was telling everyone, you're not going to hear from me for 4 days. I'm not dead. I'm just reading.
Yeah, it's a very similar situation for me last week. Like, the whole week, I just was consumed by that book. But yeah, we'll do a more general discussion probably later on. But for this video, we're going to talk about top 10 moments. And I'm going to start us off with the opening scene at Hearthstone. So I think this book opened like really nicely, especially the whole like starting off with Kaladin's father and his contrast with like Kaladin. It just reminds us of how different they are in terms of their philosophies. And then like Kaladin trying to sneak in, but he was seen, and then the fighting automatically starts in the beginning. I thought that scene was great. It introduces us to the pursuer, and it also introduces us to like the flying ship and everything.
See, I love that type of stuff with like the flying ship, and now we're getting into the more magical stuff where it's more fantastical, like with these flying ships. I really do also love the opening with Hearthstone because it doesn't open up in like a traditional Stormlight way. It actually opens up almost in the ending of like book 3.5, where this would be the climax of saving everyone, and you have the flying ship and you have all these things, and I like that. It reminds me a lot of like Indiana Jones, how there's like the adventure before the actual adventure, or even like James Bond, like you have the setup and then you have the fallout between the next couple parts.
Yeah, it definitely opened like super strong with like a really good action sequence too, and I think it set up so many things that got paid off later on. But for me, it was just so, I don't know, when I read and also listen, because I do both.
I do the same thing as well.
Just the scene itself was, I don't know, in my mind it's so cinematic, and it's so like great to see Kaladin fighting the pursuer in the beginning, and then to really get to see what happens later on.
Yeah, no, most definitely, especially then when you get to the stuff with Roshon being murdered by Moash. And it's this person that's just been the blight of Kaladin's just dead. And he's like, oh, well, what do I do now? I guess I'm just going to mope here with Moash for a little bit. And things end up.
I feel like if we're talking about just the opening, because there's so many moments in the opening that we can talk about, right? Kaladin's powers, like losing his powers at one point, was also a big moment too. And then like him taking out the pursuer after that. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I thought, because I actually read these chapters when they were coming out from Tor.com, I thought the big event at the end of the book was actually going to be everyone losing their powers and figuring out a way to defeat the villain without being able to use their surges and come up with clever ways, kind of like how they had at the end of Oathbringer, where you see all them using their powers in clever ways. Now that they can't, how do you come up with a situation? But I was pleasantly surprised that actually, in some weird way, becomes the crux of the Year of Theros stuff, of how do we do our magic when it doesn't work that well.
Yeah. I think that was that's later on, but that was definitely one of the more interesting parts when they were all trapped in Urithiru.
Yeah. And also, I think the thing that I love about the opening of this is that we open up, it's like the 1 year later thing, and we're already seeing different types of Orders of Knights Radiant. We see more edge dancers. We see a lot more windrunners. We see a lot more things that we don't normally got to see in the other books, and now we're slowly getting the other orders and seeing how they're working without just having a POV chapter from a person of that particular order, which I really did enjoy.
Yeah, definitely.
So for number 2, I really liked all the stuff with Shallan, especially with her greater mystery, especially when it comes to figuring out who she is, where she, her role to play within the Ghost Bloods, but more importantly, how she's being able to coexist with Radiant and Veil in this way. Oh man, I thought those were some of the best moments, especially with Shallan, who's a character that for me can be hit or miss, but she's slowly growing on to a way that I absolutely love her.
Yeah, I feel like Shallan and Adolin's role in this book was definitely smaller compared to the previous ones. Personally, if I were to compare, the interactions and everything that they did in this book to the other ones, I prefer the other ones, but at least for this one, we get a resolution with Shallan's sort of past. Like, we finally get to figure out what actually happened in the past. Well, we don't know for sure exactly what happened, but we do know that she kills her first like spren, and it's the spren that they actually meet in Shadesmar. And that's the moment that I enjoyed the most, when she was about to kill, shoot, I'm forgetting.
Kellic?
Yeah. The Herald. And she just stands there and has this big moment. And I feel like, I'm pretty sure the Herald just knew it was happening, or at least like was I mean, in the book it didn't say he was watching, but like I feel like in some ways he might have been. But that's the moment that I thought was really great for Shallan. Like she finally gets closure for all of that. And us as readers finally get some closure, because it's something that's come up for a very long time now, and it's satisfying to see. I mean, I don't know if I like Vale disappearing and like she's completely gone, because I like Vale, but at the same time, like Shallan getting closure is something I really wanted.
Yeah, no, for me, the second that Vale left was like, you're strong, goodbye. I was like, oh, my heart. Oh, why are you doing this, Brando? Why are you hurting me? Because out of all of her personalities, she was the most fun and engaging. But now that we have, I feel like when it comes to the whole arc of Shallan's going to be her losing all of her personalities and just being herself in that way. And it's all those sacrifices and challenges, because each personality is just a different part of her that just has a special expertise. But when Vale went away, Shallan learned all that stuff that Vale knew. So it's going to be interesting in the long run. Though I thought the cool lore thing is that now we know that a spren can bond with a Radiant twice. If you lose one, you could possibly gain another one. So maybe that might be a role to play. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
I really loved all the stuff with all the ghost blood stuff, because I like that we're getting more into the secret society and how it's not just a Rosharan thing, but it's a global Cosmere thing, where when I was getting those little mysteries of the book, and it was like, who is the leader of it? And it kept bothering me until they had the last part with Mraize. And I was like, oh God, my brain exploded slightly, because I realized all at once, oh God, it's Kelsier from Mistborn. That's who this person is, because they kept bringing up certain things. I'm like, oh no, this book's really Cosmere heavy, and people be like, oh, who's this person? But if you know the Cosmere, just like, oh no, this is awful, this is terrible, because Brandon said a long time ago, if he was ever to use Kelsier for another story, he would make him the villain of the piece. So this is all interesting stuff to me, and I love when we have those little things, especially with the Ghost Bloods, and how even Gavilar dropped his name in the beginning of the first prologue of The Way of Kings. So it's a big thing for the long run.
Yeah, and I didn't actually realize that myself. You're the one who pointed it out to me, so I was very surprised by that.
Yeah, it's a great little thing that Brandon Sanderson does, where he starts putting in these little clues, especially with this book, where there's like a lot of Cosmere stuff that it's like blink if you miss it, but it's like these huge things, like the sand that Navani uses is the sand from White Sand. There's like autopsies of Elantrians from Elantris, if you ever read that book. Mm-hmm. And there's like a lot of other things, like we have Nightblood from Warbreaker, we have even Vasher, who is the Swordmaster, that Kaladin sees. Like there's those little things that the scope of it, that's what I love. I kind of like connecting universes in this way, and I think Brandon Sanderson actually does it the best out of every author, living and dead. Like the closest I would think is like Lovecraft, but even his stuff isn't as connected as Brandon's is at times.
Yeah, just to give some background, for me, I've only read the Mistborn and Stormlight stuff, and Elantris, but that was a while back, and I need to get into the Cosmere stuff more, for sure.
It's great. It's one of those things where the more you read it, I think Brandon Sanderson's work in the Cosmere before moving forward is great for the initial impression, but then when you start to get into it and you do your rereads, you'll notice things that, like, are these just for me, or did the author just think 98 years ahead?
Yeah. But I feel like right now Shallan her storyline's tied very heavily with the Ghost Bloods, so it becomes more necessary. Not necessarily, but I think it would enrich the story more if if I knew the other characters. So
yeah,
but I do know Kelsier.
Yeah,
so.
It's one of those things where I feel like the way that it's written also is, if you didn't know that, the story would be fine the same way, because basically Shallan is pissed off the Illuminati and now they're all coming after her.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how that goes, but we'll talk about that in a later video for predictions and stuff. All right, so to move on, when you mentioned the Sprens and how you can bond another one, it's not the same, but it sort of led me to the segue for the third moment, which is Adolin's trial. When we saw Maya, they're not bonded, but his essentially Shardblade on trial, and she actually speaks. And I thought that was I saw it coming for sure, like I feel like they set that up quite a lot, because like her fighting and helping Adolin, and then her like actually telling him his name in the other book, and just a whole bunch of stuff set up that moment, and it leads us to another mystery as well, which is like the Recreants. There's more that we don't know to what they did. So
yeah,
that definitely was a great moment for me, especially the honor sprint too, like getting their asses handed to them. Like I was very happy about that because they were so annoying.
Yeah. See, for me, the one thing that I've always, it's not that I have a problem with, but it's something that gets really under my skin as a fear, is always when you're trying to do a trial and these people are trying to mess you up in a way. It's like kangaroo court, or the way that I said it in my review, it's like a drumhead trial where they're already going to assume you're guilty and they're doing certain things. And when it comes down to this book, I was getting a lot of To Kill a Mockingbird vibes. Like, Adolin's trying so hard to just keep the status quo, where all the Spren are just like, if you, we're going to do all this stuff. I was waiting for the Maya stuff because it felt like that was probably was going to happen. But I was waiting for like, he's just about to be declared guilty when Maya says her stuff. And we have almost like a Star Trek Picard speech. And then Kelleck's like, you know what? You're not guilty. You win.
Yeah, but the way it happened was very satisfying. Like her screaming it out, and Adolin. I mean, I think we'll talk about this again in probably predictions, or let's just mention it a little bit now, right? I feel like there's potential for Adolin to actually end up bonding with her, or like her somehow resurrecting in some ways. It just feels set up, you know?
Yeah, most definitely, especially with, there's a little thing that I noticed as well, is that apparently the Deadeye Spren that Maya is a new thing. This happened only with the Recreants and not prior to this. This is like something that's new, so maybe this is kind of the way, because when we get to the stuff with like Navani and the Sibling that's going a little ahead, maybe this might be kind of the step forward that people need. And this is like one way to fix a lot of the, I won't call them war crimes, but these afflictions that kind of have the Spren and the humans at odds a little bit, as with everything with the Recreants.
Her statement already like shows the Spren that they didn't kill their bonded Spren. It was an aligned thing. They chose to do it with the humans.
Yeah, it was mutually assured destruction.
Yeah, so that revelation is big news. And it was also a great moment.
Yeah, there's a lot of those like really big moments, especially for the next one. I love the stuff with Yasna. All of Yasna's chapters, even though I think there's like 2 or 3.
There's very little in this book.
But they're so good because she is a badass mother trucker in this entire book. All this stuff that she's doing, I was waiting for more of her POV chapters to be her being more of the monarch, being more of the queen, but because she technically doesn't have a kingdom, she's only in that by name, but so she's showing through examples such as taking up Shardblade and a Shardblade and being on the front lines of the battlefield. But also one of my favorite parts in this whole book that made me like laugh gasp was when she's like goading this Bright Lord into a duel and she just stabs him in the throat.
I thought she was going to leave him to die, but she ended up saving him.
She did something worse. I think death was too kind for that person.
Yeah, he lost all his titles and everything too. So.
Yeah, and surely that won't bite her in the butt in one way, shape, or form. I mean, it's happened so with Amaram and Sadeas. Oh man, it's all weird stuff. But I like that this whole book, like I noticed the major theme besides it being a book all about war is it's a book about change, how you can't keep doing the exact same thing over and over again. You have to move forward. If you look at Adolin or Dalinar or even Kaladin in The Way of Kings and look at them now, they're still the same character, but they've progressed in a way they're, you know, it's like a human thing. Like you're learning from your experiences. And we see this with Yasna, how she would turn people into like smoke and water and things, just goat people into, actually come to think of it, I think Yasna hasn't changed the most. I
exactly,
think
I was going to mention that.
She's kind of stayed the same, like goading people into things, but she's taking on this new role, same as how when it comes to Adolin, he's taking this new role as being, he's technically not his father's son. Really, he's his own Bright Lord. He's his own person. He even assumes responsibility of the trial. And we see this with like Jasnah, pretty much like, I got to see what combat's like. I have to start murdering people. I have to smell the blood on the air type of stuff to understand the consequences of what we're doing.
Yeah, that moment was great for Jasnah because we always get to see her in sort of a higher authoritative place where whatever she says goes. And whenever she's fighting with someone, it's usually someone like much weaker than her. But in this scenario, we get to see her being restrained and actually trying to fight like a regular soldier as best as she can and struggling with it. So getting to see her struggle is something that's like not new because we've seen it before, but it's newer. It's because for her character, she's usually so strong and so like in control. So it was a great moment for sure.
And there's like a really great monologue from Jasnah that I like because in the story, she is an atheist, but yet there's this whole monologue. She kind of talks about theology in a way of like, she's kind of understanding why people have faith when she doesn't necessarily have faith, especially on the battlefield. Was like, well, what do you latch on to when people are coming at you about to murder you? You latch on to faith a little bit, even though she doesn't believe in it. She now kind of has an appreciation to it because that's kind of her whole thing of why she was in exile, was she's a heretic, but she's kind of understanding the importance of both her own beliefs, but the beliefs of others, which I really liked about her as well, that she's learning.
Yeah. And the next top moment is actually personal to you, right?
Yes.
This is Dabbid. We're going to talk a little bit about Dabbid.
Yes. Dabbid is a character that I actually completely forgot about until this book. Because
same.
I was like, who's this person? But his POV chapters actually kind of made me cry a little bit because, Stormlight Archive is such a for me personally, a book that resonates for me because it talks about mental illness. It talks about, a lot of things in a way that I think are really amazing with all the stuff with like Renarin or even like the Lopin or Kaladin with his depression. But when it comes to Dabbid's chapters about feeling different, not feeling like you're the right person, because he's written in a way that he also has autism. I have autism, so this is like really resonated with me because you get these like emotional chapters that are like this is the thing that would probably show people like this is how it feels like to be like, sometimes you don't talk because you don't want to feel like an idiot, but then there's other times where you want to talk, you want to be expressive, you want to kick butt. And when it comes to Dabbid stuff, I thought how Brandon Sanderson handled him was so touching. It actually reminds me a lot of like the Gentle Giant character because, he befriends Lift and they get food, and he's just such an interesting character for a character that no one cared about to suddenly, I care all about him. Like I want to adopt him the same way as I want to adopt Renarin, and we can all go out and get pizza together. That's the type of stuff that I love. Those are the chapters that really pull at my heartstrings.
Yeah, and I mean, like, he was an essential character to this storyline as well. Like, I thought a great moment from him was when he was gonna take this stuff and like jump and like try to like break the next crystal. I think it was the second gem.
Yeah.
When Kaladin wouldn't wake up and he was about to go and do it himself. So that was just like hilarious, and like it shows his character, how brave he is and how willing he is to like try to live up to his bonds with Bridge 4 and just being part of the team, really.
Yeah, he's most definitely a team player, especially with all the Bridge 4 stuff. Like, this is a good example, if we go back to Change, is that this book is the breaking of Bridge 4 a little bit. Like, they even take the Bridge 4 bridge and turn it into the flying machine. Like, it's the fourth bridge. Like, this is as closure as you're going to get until that thing gets exploded. And there's going to be the moment where the bridge survives and they're all going to have to come together at the end, even Moash, and do something dumb. And I'm waiting for that because they keep talking about it.
That's a wonderful prediction.
No, it's going to be like, or maybe it might be hit the nail on the head type of thing where they have to form a human bridge and they're missing one link and Moash comes in. Oh god, it's like the Lego Batman movie.
Okay. Yeah, as someone that, doesn't quite have a as personal connection with Dabbid, I still loved his storyline, and it gave me similar vibes to Spook in some ways, from Mistborn, but his sort of character was longing to do something like for the team and trying to do something more, even though they had things holding them back.
Yeah, most definitely, especially when it comes to like the final thing with like his POV chapter. He's kind of wanting to get a spren for the wrong reasons, And it's like, once I get this spren, it's going to fix me. But that's one thing I love about Brandon Sanderson's magic system is it doesn't fix something that's a part of you. It only fixes things that you not necessarily want fixed, but things that can be fixed that aren't just a part of your identity. Like when it comes to
like
Ryzen.
physical healing.
Like when it comes to Ryzen, have you read Dawn Shard by chance yet?
Not yet. I'm about to do that soon.
Okay, then this is just Oathbringer spoilers and how she tried to get a edge dancer to heal her, but it got to the point of where her paralysis is just a part of her, so she doesn't get her legs healed and things like that. There's like little things like Renarin doesn't suddenly like, oh, now I'm fixed. I don't got autism anymore. It doesn't work like that. And I kind of think that's an interesting thing, especially when it comes to if we get more Dabbid chapters. If he ever gets a sprint, what's going to happen with that? And kind of his reconciliation. So on the topic of like Dabbid and stuff, we're going to be doing our number 6 moment, which is actually Navani bonding with the sibling. And this is kind of some fun, epic stuff because, you know, throughout the story, we see the sibling and Navani like interacting and how Navani in theory is the bad guy of the story in many ways, whereas the siblings like, well, this is how it is. But then they come to the reconciliation at the end when there's no other choice but to bond. You know, my enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Yeah, well, I think the sibling, I really liked that moment when they bonded because it sort of gave us some closure to Navani's arc in this book, because in the beginning we see how Gavilar treats her and it's terrible. Like basically she's in many ways abused and just she feels worthless. And his statement in the beginning when he was telling her, you are not worthy of knowing these things because you can't take it and stuff like that. And then the moment when she finally bonds the spren, well, before that, basically the sibling says the same thing. The sibling's like, you're not worthy. Like when Navani asks like, why won't you bond with me? And then the sibling says, you're not worthy. And then they cut to a different scene and they cut back. And then Navani convinces the sibling after Navani shows the sibling that she understands the rhythms and she understands like so much. She's a scientist, and they actually in many ways connect in that sense. They have this common thing that they can bond over, and that's where they meet and that's how they bond. So I thought that was a great moment because of that, and how like in many ways the sibling is saying, well, Navani first stated herself, I am worthy, you know, like I can do all these things, and she did those things. To me, it sort of gave us some closure for Navani, like her realizing that, you know, she is a scholar. She is someone who is better than any other scholar that is there, right? Even though by name she's not.
Especially when it comes to like Gavilar, like gaslighting her. There's even that part like, oh, you're never going to be a scholar and stuff. And then when she's doing the stuff with the few, it's like, oh, you're a scholar. No, I'm not. Like she starts to like freak out a little bit because her entire life she's like, everyone kept telling her she wasn't. But yet she's the smartest person in all of Roshar. She figures out things based off of most scientific experiments happen by accident. Like the whole idea of like the rhythm of war and seeing the positive and negative of light. Like, oh, it's because of the sand and everything was there. Like she figures all this stuff out. Though my favorite part of this whole book is when they're doing the siblings like talking to her through the sand read. And it's like the trace the call moment where she's trying to triangulate where it is in the tower. And I just love that type of like dumb like 90s, like we gotta trace the call. Oh no, it's, you know, keep him talking, keep him on the line. I love those little moments, though. My favorite moment is when she does bond and she says a one-liner from an action movie. She says, "Journey before destination, you bastard." She burned Moash so bad he lost his fucking eyesight. Yeah,
so I thought that was also somewhat of a mirror in terms of how Moash from Oathbringer killed the king right before he bonded his friend. So that was a very sad moment, and then like it was almost like a reflection of that moment, but this time Navani actually does bond this friend and like kicks Moash's ass.
Yeah,
so
it's one of those, it's like the what if scenario, like this is the alternate universe where Elhokar was able to bond and then kick his butt. This is kind of like you get that closure, especially it's a mother confronting her son's killer in that way, and there's a lot of like the pent up aggression, and we see this, and then we get to the whole stuff with Moash actually losing his eyesight, which I'm interested to see where this is going, especially when it comes to the Moash stuff. Like every time Moash does something good, he thinks he just loses a little more part of himself, and everyone around him gets stronger.
Yeah, Elhokar's death was very saddening in the previous book. So I'm glad that Navani didn't experience the same thing, and we got to see some sort of satisfaction from that, like making up for it almost, for me at least.
Yeah, no, most definitely.
The next one for number 7, we're gonna go with Leswhi's betrayal. Basically, the moment where she found out that Venli was a Knight Radiant, and then all of a sudden, what Venli expected was not what happened at all. She expected to be like reprimanded and cast aside, but instead, Leswhi was very happy about it, and she apparently wants to meet with this old friend or old friend that was her friend, and then decides to actually help the Knight Radiants, which was a very surprising scene for me. And also, I liked it a lot because for me personally, my favorite character is Kaladin, and the moments between Leswhi and Kaladin were like fun to read because basically they're supposed to be enemies trying to kill each other, but they do it in such an honorable way, or they do it in such a tasteful way where they prefer to see who's better at fighting and who's the more skilled like person, or in many ways like flyer. Or
yeah, it kind of reminds me of the Goku Vegeta relationship a little bit when it comes to Leswhi and Kaladin. Like, oh man, you beat my butt, but next time I'll just get stronger to beat your butt. Dang, let's keep this cycle until we're gods.
Yeah, so when Leswhi actually decided to help them, like it was just so satisfying to see that, because she's not like the other. I mean, Rabonio's not like the others either, but like Leswhi also more so, because the pursuer is just some crazy person that's trying to kill Kaladin.
Yeah.
And she's someone that I wanted to turn good. So when it happened, it was satisfying.
Yeah, no, most definitely, especially with kind of when it comes to the Venli and Eshonai stuff, especially when it comes to Leswhi, all the singer stuff personally for me didn't resonate, except for those scenes that are the most, even though they're not human, the most human, because it's, you know, it's compassion. It's things that, it's weird because you have like passion with Odium, but there's, I guess, negative would be compassion in many ways, where we see this, she gives them the map and turns out that a lot of the listeners survived. And we see this with maybe almost like not turning tails, but realizing that some things are worth fighting for, while other times we're just going to keep being in this war no matter what. Maybe being compassionate and helping people, we can make a better future than just constant machine of war at times.
Yeah, but I mean, Navani solved that issue.
Oh, she did.
So now there's permadeath, so
yeah, it became less of a war of territorial control and a war of attrition. I almost said nutrition. Yum, yum.
I was going to say, like, I don't know what it reminds me of, but Leswhi, like, all of a sudden turning traitor reminds me of something that I've seen before, but it just seems, it seems funny and climactic at the same time, just like awesome. I don't remember where it might be from, but like it's just so random in some ways when she decided to do that.
Yeah, I mean that's also like a kind of a trope, especially in like mythology, or I'm about to say like James Cameron's Avatar, where you have the one person that's like you're turning your back on your own kind to help these people. That's what I was kind of getting those vibes about, but in a much more detailed way it comes to this, because a lot of the fuse, which I like about this, isn't just like a hive mind, but rather they all have their own thoughts and feelings. And now that there's permadeath, you have like mercy killings and people that don't want to be fused. They're forced to be it, which can't wait to see what happens with that.
Yeah, definitely.
The next big thing that we have, the 8th big moment, is actually Teft's death. I got really sad when this happened.
Yeah, I didn't want it to happen. I feel like I knew somebody was going to die in this book because of Alucard's death, but why did it have to be Teft, especially after he's got things better, you know, like no more fire moss, and he's been off of it for what, like he said 7 months or something?
Yeah, 7 months.
And he's felt the happiest he's been in a very long time, and then he dies, and he dies like happy as well, and like he has faith in Kaladin. It was such a terrible but great moment, you know.
Well, that's the thing that I love about when it comes to Stormlight Archive as well, is that all the main characters that have superpowers are some of the most broken people, and how the magic system works in this isn't based off of, you know, hitting the gym and like getting swole, but rather coming up with your own self-acceptance of your problems and figuring out what works. And when it comes to like Teft, we see this, like he kind of is the huge inciting incident and Oathbringer, why even Moash has the sword that kills him. Like there's like a lot of those things, and it's perpetuate in the way of how when it comes to his narrative, what I liked about it is that he's able to have a nice closure, even though he's dead. At least he ends out on a high note rather than hitting rock bottom again, which I like. And he even gets like a king's funeral. Like that's how much people respected him. And it's weird because there's also the thing like he's now like we get to know a little more of his past and how his family was in a cult, which I think is interesting. And I hope that kind of comes back in a way because the way they bring it up was like 40 years ago before anything. Like what's happening with this? Like the time scale of the Spren coming back keeps getting further and further back until who knows what happens with that.
Yeah, and I love his mindset about the entire thing. Like, if his family wasn't a cult, if they didn't do all those crazy things, then Teft wouldn't have been able to save Kaladin, and Kaladin wouldn't be like there. So basically, everything would have gone wrong. Dalinar would have died, and so it's just Teft in a way was just that character that helped make everything happen.
I also love Teft's Spren so much as this. What's the best way to put it? It's because she's like a full-size Spren that's like people-sized, but she chastises Teft a little bit, but she's like a support. I just love that relationship. It's when it happened when like Moash like stabbed his Spren and she died. Like it hurt me so bad. Like he just everything about that death is perfect. I mean, George R. R. Martin prepared me for horrible, horrific deaths, but this Brandon Sanderson's like, nah, hold my warm water.
Yeah, this death was. I think Alucard's death surprised me more because it was the first like big death, Mm-hmm. But this one was more meaningful to me because I actually liked Teft. To me, this is one of the best moments out of the top 10 for sure.
Yeah, no, most definitely. This is one of those that will probably stay with me for a very, very long time because when it comes to character deaths, this one feels like it's it's final. Like they ain't coming back. And this is one where it's like the death of a friend in a way of, even though these people aren't real, the more you read, especially the trials and tribulations of going from Bridge 4 all the way up to here, they feel like friends sometimes. So when you see one of them die, it's like a gut punch in a way that's hard to explain unless you've sat down and read the whole series and like just poured over it, like my heart, no. And then that kind of goes into the biggest one. I think the people are gonna bring up most in their lists. What would that one be?
Kaladin swears the fourth ideal. So I love that moment quite a lot because, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like he knew the words and he's known the words this entire book, and also sort of like that moment in Oathbringer as well. Yeah. He just chose not to say them because he didn't want... it would have broken him if he said it, I guess.
Yeah, because there's the part where they're on the ship in Shadesmar, and even because when it comes to that, I remember that scene specifically in Oathbringer because even says like you don't have to say until you're ready, and every moment and obstacle he's had throughout this book leads him up to pretty much saying, I can't protect everyone. It's an impossibility, which I think is such an appropriate oath for a Windrunner, or especially Kaladin, because you can't save everyone.
Yeah, the entire time I was trying to like guess what the fourth ideal might be for him. I did not guess that actually. So
what was your theory? What was your working one?
It's something along the lines of like he has to be willing to sacrifice himself to protect or something. Like just something along those lines where he's willing to, but he already reached that point, so it wasn't even a good theory to begin with.
The one that I thought of for his fourth idea was going to be, I can protect others, but I can't protect others from themselves because of the whole Moash thing, because he's just on this self-destructive typhoon of emotions. But I really like
that's a better one for sure. Versus like sacrificing yourself to protect others.
I mean, that could always be the fifth ideal, because the fifth ideal is always the hardest one. And you can't protect everyone, but the ones you try to protect, sometimes people don't want to be saved. Might be for the fifth one. Yeah. But I just love how, like, when it comes to when he actually says it is because he's free-fallen with Lyrid. And he either has to say it or they're going to become little... I don't know, blood spren, or I guess smear spren, or no, ink spren would be the appropriate one.
Yeah, but Dalinar intervening was also good when he stopped time and Kaladin got to like gain closure for Tien and everything. I was very glad about that because he's been moping the entire book, also the previous one, and basically the entire story so far. So I'm glad that he finally got closure for it. And I don't want to say moping as in like it's annoying, but like sometimes he does do it quite a lot, and I want him to move forward. Yeah. So he finally has, at least like the way I see it, he definitely has moved further.
Yeah, no, most definitely. The word I'd probably use for this is he monologues a little too much sometimes in the self-pity party. And I mean, that's also a thing that's actually a good thing to bring up as well, is that one of the things that I think accompanies this fourth ideal is that Kaladin is going to be finding his own way in helping people that, have depression or have PTSD or have any other affliction that... Because we see within the story, Ardents have no idea what mental illness is. They just know how to treat the physical, but not the mental. Because even in the magic system, you can't really treat the mental. You can only treat the physical. And I like that Kaladin's kind of taking this first step. First, he did almost, not AA meeting, but he's doing like these meetings and he's helping everyone.
That's what I sort of thought about when he did those meetings.
I thought of the weirdest one was the one they did in... Avengers Endgame, where Steve Rogers goes to this meeting when everyone gets snapped out, is what I felt like. It's a support meeting. That he's just making support meetings.
Yeah.
Which I think there's going to be like soon going to be like a number line, like going to have like Dalinar, Adolin, or Nara, and there's going to be too many people coming in with their folding tables, and they're gonna need so many pots of coffee, man.
Because practically every main character that has bonded with the Spren has issues, like mental issues.
Yeah. And some of them are interesting too, like when it comes to Lift, she doesn't want to grow up, but yet throughout the narrative of the story, she's growing up. Which is always an interesting plot thing, especially her role to play with everything.
Yeah, but also to mention, like the previous scenes, like right before that, as well as after, were great scenes as well. Like Kaladin fighting the Pursuer, him just using that Fabrial and basically pseudo wind running. So that was fun to, I don't want to say watch, but in my head, it was fun to see it, come to life.
Yeah, it was, oh, go on, I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, and him beating the Pursuer, like right after finding Teft's dead body, was also great.
Yeah, it's funny that you said watch, because I've totally watched this before. It's called Die Hard with Bruce Willis at times. And I was watching it, I was reading it, and the similarities are so big that I'm just, because there is the whole genre of, it's like Die Hard, but I kind of like this in this story of having Kaladin like this. Like, I'm planning on probably making a video all about the similarities, because they get to the point of where Kaladin loses his shoes, and there's a part where he like uses adhesion to put his spear on his back, like how John McClane tapes a gun to his back. Like, there's like, it's, I gotta, if I ever meet Brandon Sanderson, Brando, we could watch Die Hard together. It's okay. You don't have to write about it.
Yeah, since you mentioned that to me, I actually watched the movie and I can see some similarities.
There's quite a lot, especially with them using like a walkie-talkie system with like the Sibling to communicate about terrorists, as well as there's the vault, or I guess the protection for the Sibling.
Yeah. I definitely feel like that story for Kaladin was very similar to some stuff that I've watched. The thing that came up for me was a Young Justice episode where the Red Tornado's family basically took over their headquarters, and the only people that were there were the powerless people, basically. And everyone else was captured sort of like in a sleep state. So it was very reminiscent for me of that.
Yeah, and that's when I kind of like those types of things, especially in this book. It seemed appropriate to have, how does someone actually defend the location without having superpowers when they're so used to having superpowers? I like that so much in this narrative. And even, I like that now we have the fourth ideal as shard plate, and now Kaladin has this like cool, sleek shard plate that doesn't even feel like shard plate. Oh man, I love that type of stuff. I can't wait to see what happens. I can't even wait to see what happens with the fifth ideal. I can't remember what it is. Someone told me what it was like a long time ago. You unlock like your full potential. Like you could, I'm probably getting this wrong because I always get magic systems wrong, but if Kaladin wanted to like lash a meteor, he in theory could.
Lash a meteor?
Yeah. Like he just has his full potential. Like there's no blockers. He could do whatever he needs to do and things like that. But I'm sure people will be like, eh.
We can speculate on it later.
Oh yeah, we can speculate. And that brings us to the last one that I think for me is one of the biggest things, is the oh my gosh moment was actually the epilogue of Rhythm of War. Usually the epilogues are really interesting when it comes to Stormlight books, but this one is groundbreaking in my opinion and what it does.
Oh, okay. Let me know why, because for me it was definitely a fun scene, and like I think there's a lot to talk about in terms of Taravangian and Hoid, but I kind of was frustrated by it. I was like, because I like Hoid. I know Brandon Sanderson has said that, you know, he's not a wonderful like character to beat around because he's dangerous, but I like him as a character because so far he's helped Kaladin a lot. He's helped our main characters quite a lot, so I see him as a good guy, and seeing him struggle like that when he's always so like cool and so like he's the one that's usually winning, it was frustrating to see.
Yeah, no, most definitely. Especially, I think the reason why this is groundbreaking is that Hoid kind of loses his memories in a way of, I think he's probably going to get them back because he has all these different magic systems, and he'll probably use, I have a feeling he might have like a backup drive in the sense of Furukami. Like, oh no, my memories are gone. Look at this, I have this USB drive right here. Just put it on my wrist. Oh, now I remember everything. That's good.
Wait, just to clarify, I thought Taravangian just wiped his memory of like what just happened, or did he wipe his memory of like other stuff too?
So Taravangian kind of wiped his short-term memory a little bit, but also at the same time, that's a huge thing because now he can't really help people in that way until it's probably going to be too late type of sense. But now that we know that you can use like investiture and you can use the magic system to do things like this, especially with Taravangian being able to use the rules in this way, now that he's like big brain a little bit, is kind of the dangerous thing. And yeah, I think the whole stuff that I'm more concerned about is all the Taravangian Odium stuff. I don't know what the ship name for that is yet, so I can't tell you. I think it's Thordium. I don't know. Working title coming soon.
Yeah.
But yeah, you have that stuff with Hoid, and you have that stuff with Taravangian. I think personally, my biggest thing is I think Cultivation's the real villain of the story, and Odium is just
I was gonna mention that in our predictions video.
Oh yeah, someone was like, no, it isn't. I'm like, this is the person that schemes the most. They got this. If this is Dune, they got plans within plans.
Yeah, man. But any other things for the epilogue, or?
I think we could wrap up with this. I think for me that was one of the biggest moments, because you're taking someone that's very godly and kind of weakening them in a way that we haven't seen before, in the implication of, well, you're thinking short term, we're not doing all of Roshar, we're doing all the Cosmere, baby, if I win. Like, oh no, this is bad. But yeah, that's kind of it.
Yeah, so that was our top 10 moments from Stormlight Archive, Rhythm of War. Definitely are just our opinions, and there's so much in this book that obviously we cannot cover every single moment, and some of our moments are actually very broad as well, so we covered multiple moments in a single moment. But yeah, that's our list. Let us know what your list is. Leave them in the comments. And also, we will make a predictions video, but it's going to be on Zach's channel instead of the Blue Lotus channel. I'll leave an end card for you guys to click on and an info card. Thanks for watching. See you guys in the next one.
Bye.